So this week is our first bonus episode.
So it's a week of first, actually. So it's a first paid sponsor for our podcast, first interview with a movie producer. A lot of firsts.
Yeah, a lot of firsts. So if you guys haven't listened to this week's regularly scheduled podcast, we talked about Burying the Ex. You can find that movie on Amazon Prime. And we already discussed it. We were sponsored by Mount Mojo. It was awesome. It was a really good podcast. I was really proud of that.
Yes.
And now today, we are back to talk more about Burying the Ex. I'm pretty sure we need to own the movie now. Like, I think we've decided. We're buying it.
I think that's fair. Unless somebody wants to send it to us. That would be awesome.
Oh, yeah. Solicitations are really recommended. Anyways, so we're here to interview the producer of Burying the Ex. His name is Kyle Tekiela.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm really excited. So should we get into it?
All right. So I'm Tyler. And
I'm Shay.
And thank you for joining us, Kyle Tekiela, a producer from Burying the Ex. And I think we'll start just with the questions. Thank you for joining our podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to be here. I'm glad people are still watching the movie.
All right. So my first question, to start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the film industry.
Sure. I'm from Chicago originally and have a background in editing. I went to school for editing and started out doing trailers and documentaries and that kind of stuff. And then eventually moved out to LA and found myself doing more features and longer format stuff. And then started meeting directors and producers, as you do, just because they're in the neighborhood. Literally, you'll meet them walking your dog. And that's how I met my producing partner, Carl, on this film. And we became buddies. And he had this script, Burying the Ex, with Joe Dante already attached. I'd never produced a movie before, but, he just felt like I could do it. And I knew I could, of course. It's just about learning, a couple things. And we went out and we figured out how to make this movie in a span of about a year and a half after we met. It was pretty wild. A lot of ups and downs, as there always is in any film production. But I feel like I got pretty lucky that I was able to put something together so quickly and have a real movie on my resume to kind of springboard off of and start a producing career.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm sure that a lot of people don't know what a producer actually does. Can you tell us what a day in the life of a producer actually looks like?
Yeah, it's really boring and very depressing. It's really like 90% of the time I'm just literally calling people, asking them to put money into a movie, and the other 10% of the time it's looking for material. Or dealing with agents and trying to get cast on board. And like, there's probably a 0.5% in there. Like, as far as time goes, is, if like you look at this, like the day you get an idea for a story to the day that it comes out, like it's like 1% or even less that you're actually making a movie, on set.
Yeah.
So, it's a lot of running around and asking, and it's a lot of grinding, and you're kind of like a door-to-door salesman. Like, that's kind of how it feels in a way, but you're selling something that doesn't exist, and someone has to imagine it before they're going to put $1 million into it.
So you're selling a concept, not an actual thing, essentially.
Yeah, at the beginning, and then eventually it starts to come together. You get a piece of cast, or for example, on this one we had a director, and you kind of start. It becomes a magnet, and it starts over time becoming more magnetic and more attractive, and then eventually you get to the point where everything comes together, and then you're going to make a movie. It's very difficult.
So it sounds like you started right at the beginning of the movie being brought together, but Joe Dante was already on.
Yeah, this movie started as a short from what I read. So did you start back when it was a short, or did you start soon after that?
Yeah, so the short was written by Alan Trezza, the writer of the feature, and Alan actually directed it. He just he's been a writer for a long time and just wanted to get his hands dirty and actually get something on camera. So he wrote this to shoot as a short, did it, and then he sent it to Joe Dante and Mark Allen, who's his head of development at his company. And they liked the idea of this girlfriend that comes back from the dead. It felt very kind of 80s reminiscent, something that Joe Dante would have directed back in the 80s,
Right.
And they just they attach themselves. I mean, and this kind of stuff happens all the time. You get a director that says, yeah, if you can get it made, I'll do it, and that's kind of how it was on this one. So he was attached. We were able to go out with him, saying, hey, Joe Dante is going to direct this. And that makes things a little easier once you've identified like who the creative, visionary is behind the project. And then you start getting pieces of the puzzle. And typically those pieces are financing or sales pieces. There's kind of a whole machinery in place in Hollywood of sales companies and then financing companies and debt companies. And then at that point, once you start having some of the financing, that's when you start talking to the agents and putting a piece of cast together. And I believe that Anton Yelchin was the first. No, actually, originally Brittany Snow was attached to play Evelyn. Yeah, for when I came on board, Brittany was in talks with Joe. They'd already met a time or two. And then, about 2 years later, when we actually made the movie, she wasn't available anymore, and we got Ashley Greene, who we absolutely love and is a dear friend of mine. I think she's fantastic.
She's amazing.
So, yeah, she killed it in this movie. And then we got Anton right after we got Ashley, or vice versa. One of the two came first, but they came very, very close together. And then Alexander Daddario and Oliver Cooper, and then we had a movie. It was a blast.
What was your experience like working with Joe Dante?
Joe's great. He's a guy who's been around the block 100 times, and he knows what he's doing, and he's very calm, and he doesn't take any bullshit, which is really nice. But he's not an asshole about it. I'm going to swear on your podcast. I don't totally care.
We swear all of the time.
Okay,
I swear all of the time.
Let's open up the floodgates right now. So yeah, I mean, it was like, you could say if you just met him once, when he's in a mood, that he's like a cranky old guy, but really he's hilarious. He's got such a dry sense of humor that if you don't know that he's telling a joke or that he's just being sarcastic with you, it can come off wrong. But like, he's just constantly sarcastic and dry and really funny. We had a blast working on the movie, and he did a great job in a very small amount of time.
Well, that leads to my next question. I heard in an interview with Joe Dante that he said Bearing the X was made in a month. I'm imagining that's just filming.
Yeah, for sure.
What challenges
20 days of shooting.
Wow.
20 days of shooting.
Four or 5 day weeks. That's how that's broken up.
So what challenges go into making a movie or producing a movie on such a tight window? I imagine a lot of the groundwork is done in advance for the filming. So that
I just got. Yeah, so you've got what's called a first AD who is in charge of the schedule, but you're building your budget based off a window of time that you're going to shoot in, because every day costs like $70,000-$80,000, right? If you break it down. So it's like, that, okay, we've broken down the script and we know that we can shoot this in 20 days. We have to be really creative, but we know we can. And so that's where we're going to set our budget. And so you're pretty much locked in at that point because that's all the money you have. So you're kind of like forced to reckon with it, and there's no flexibility. So you just kind of deal with it. And typically you would set a limit to every scene. Every scene is pretty much broken down by the director, the first AD, and the director of photography is like how many shots and how they want to shoot it, et cetera, and the time. Everyone kind of knows the time it takes to set up each shot. So it's very calculated, and that's the important thing of having like an experienced crew, because they know all that stuff and there's no questions. But like if you start running late, if you're not getting the takes that you want, or you come up with like some crazy idea, it's very common to start like ripping pages out of the script and go, well, we're not going to shoot that scene anymore. And, so you kind of like give and take, and you're constantly evaluating your story and seeing what's necessary, what's not. And maybe you can combine two scenes into one. And so it's a very fluid process, because that on that 20th day, on the 12th hour, you're done. Right. So you just kind of make it happen.
I guess my next question is, what part of Bearing the X are you most proud of, and why?
I don't know.
I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot for that one.
Really good. I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that was my first movie ever, right? And I could have done something on my iPhone and made it for like $5,000 or even less, with no actors and no production design or anything, and said, hey, that was my first movie. It's a good place to start. But like somehow I figured out how to make my first movie at this level, and that's something that I think I'm proud of myself. And I look back and I go, how the fuck did I even do that? And if I wasn't able to do that, I wouldn't have any career right now. I'd be really still struggling, or I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am right now. So it's like one of those big catalyst moments that can change a life, and that's how it was for me. So on a personal note, that's what I'm most proud of. On a technical note, I mean, it's just like it's a basic, cute zombie movie with, really nothing too insane or crazy about it. The fact that it's not absolutely terrible, I'm proud of.
I'm sure that happens a lot.
Well, certain movies we watch them and then we are left scratching our heads going, what was everyone involved in this movie thinking?
Even well-known movies.
Even well-known movies,
yes.
Yeah. Where
sure.
We saw Dead Don't Die, which is a zombie movie, which was just
not good.
Star-studded cast and just did not land well for us at all.
Yeah, but speaking of the fact that it was your first movie, we hear that a lot of directors and actors take memorabilia from the films. Did you take anything from the set of Burying the X that you still have?
Yeah, I have the tombstone, Evelyn's tombstone.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I have Evelyn's tombstone, and I have the big demon book of spells, whatever that Anton Yelchin is reading out of.
Where he's making the recipes and trying to
figure out recipes. Yeah, which is funny because in production, like we have found this massive book. It's actually a Da Vinci book, like a Da Vinci, like all of his drawings and his notes and stuff like that. But we put this amazing cover on it and made it look like it's this big devil book. And I guess now that we're talking about this book, funny enough, is we were running late that day, so the inserts of the close-up of it, like his hand, like Anton's hand, like looking at recipe and like focusing on single words and stuff in the book, is actually my hand, and I shot it in my garage after we finished production.
Oh wow! So see, your hand even made a debut.
My hand's in the movie.
I don't think it got credits.
No, it didn't. No, I'm also in the movie when they're outside of the New Beverly Cinema, which Quentin Tarantino owns. I don't know if you guys know that, but that's his movie theater. Oh, wow. That Anton's watching the movies in. Then he meets Alexandra outside of. But I'm at a little table in the background, like having dinner with some girl.
It's gonna require a rewatch to zoom in.
Yeah, rewatch.
I think I'm gonna have to go back in and watch the tape. They don't even use tapes anymore. You worked with many amazing less well-known actors on this film. Who was your favorite to work with, and why?
I love Oliver Cooper. I mean, you can say maybe he's less well-known compared to some of the others, but he's had a pretty good career. He's done a few big movies and has a TV show or had a TV show for a while. But he's just one of those guys that's just absolutely hilarious 24 hours a day and is a total joy to be around when you're exhausted and you've been on set all day and you're cranky, and he's just so fun, and he just kind of brings that life back. So I really enjoyed working with him. He was great.
Interesting. I would not have pegged it based off the character because I didn't particularly care for his character. But obviously that's not the real life person. So.
But that means he did a good job.
Well, right.
Yeah, that was the script. That was the script.
So we hear about a lot of promising movie ideas that never get completed. Have you ever been excited to sign on to a film that never made it to the final cut?
That's interesting. Well, the phrasing of that question is interesting because it's like never made it to the final cut suggests that it even got into production. And so, right. So the more accurate question is like something that ever made it to any kind of financing or anything at all. Because so many movies fall apart before they even begin. And yeah, I mean, almost all of the movies fall apart before they even begin. So, you can look at my IMDb and I've got, 5 or 6, 7 features on there, but there's 50 other features that are sitting in a drawer that we worked just as hard trying to get off the ground that never just took, and you never know why. You never know what's going to take and what's not, and who's going to be attracted to some story, and the one that you think is great, someone thinks terrible, but they like the other one that you think is terrible, and you just never know. So that's why you kind of are always juggling or spinning several plates at a time because you never know which one's going to go first.
I guess my next question, Burying the X came out in 2014. Could you tell us about anything newer or any of your newer projects you're working on?
Sure, yeah. So I've got a movie that there's 2 movies that we're in post on right now that we're finishing up the final color correct and sound design. One of them is, kind of in the same vein as Burying the X. It's like a comedy horror thriller. called We Summon the Darkness that, funny enough, actually has Alexandra Daddario in it and was written by the Burying the X writer, Alan Trezza.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we're kind of bringing the band back together for this one. It's directed by a guy named Mark Myers, who did a movie called My Friend Dahmer, which I don't know if you've seen, but it's great.
Well, I know who Dahmer is, but I haven't seen the film.
Yeah, he directed this. It was like a graphic novel called My Friend Dahmer, and it was written by Jeffrey Dahmer's like closest high school friend. And so it's about Jeffrey Dahmer in high school, kind of like figuring out who he is, and kind of, I don't want to ruin the ending, but like ending on the fact that he knows that he's got these urges and he is going to kill. Right. So you never see a kill. I hope I'm not ruining the movie, but you never see a kill, but it's still a thriller, and it's really, really cool. I think it's something you guys maybe should do a future podcast on. It's a great film.
Sounds really good.
But anyway, so he directed it, and it's, it takes place in the 80s, and it's kind of, there's like a heavy metal kind of, atmosphere where these kids go to a heavy metal show, and then they go back to one of the houses to have a party, and then all hell breaks loose, and it's a lot of fun.
That sounds
well, I'm sold. You've hit basically everything. Horror, comedy, metal. Yep.
80s metal.
Yeah, it's sold.
Yeah.
Alexandra Daddario.
Well, yes, also sold.
Yeah.
Okay, so our last.
And then I guess there's one more. It's called Cutthroat City. It's completely different, but it's like an action kind of heist movie that has Ethan Hawke and Wesley Snipes and Terrence Howard.
Is that the one set during Hurricane Katrina?
Yep,
oh.
That's the one.
Yeah,
RZA directed that one from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Interesting. And then I think my last question, for any aspiring producers or people looking to break into the film industry, what piece of advice do you have, or would you give?
Persistence. You almost have to be insane, like legitimately, because it's so ridiculous. But just persistence, believing in yourself, knowing that it's going to take years and years and years to get to where you want to be, a lot of sacrifice, but also, this is like more practical advice, is like, if you're gonna like move out to LA and like try to follow that dream or whatever, make sure you have a real job while you're following your dream. I see so many people just be like, no, I'll be fine, and I'm gonna be a director. It's like, well, yeah, you'll be a director in probably 7 years, but before that you're going to be broke and starving, and you're going to move back in with your mom because you're not going to make it in time. So it's like, make sure you're taking care of yourself, you're being practical, try to find a job in the industry, and then like pursue your passion on the side, and then eventually you'll flip, and your passion project will be your full-time job. And then that's when that you can quit your other job, because you're kind of in the pipeline at that time. But it takes a really, really long time. Just have to believe in yourself and hustle and keep your ear to the grindstone and keep moving forward, and don't get frustrated.
Well, I think that's all my questions.
Is there anything else that you want to add that we didn't ask you?
What's your favorite part of the movie?
You can start.
Or what do you guys like in the movie? Give me your a little 2-minute while you guys are even doing this podcast on it.
Well, we just pick movies that catch our eye. It's really no rhyme or reason. We do random
And
movies.
he's very obsessed with zombie movies. I don't know, he's being modest here.
I do very, very much love a good zombie movie. I've watched most of them.
Yeah, and I was drawn to the movie because of Ashley Greene. Of course, I'm a girl, so I've seen Twilight, so these things happen. So, but I actually ended up liking Alexandra Daddario way better in this movie, and the whole fruit boot aspect of the movie was definitely something that I was drawn to.
Well, I think we had found this through Anton Yelkin, where we did a previous movie, Thoroughbreds, and
which is great.
It's an amazing movie too.
We stumbled upon it on his IMDb and looked at the trailer, and I was sold, and it was added to the list, which is 1 million pages long at this point. We have so many movies, and
sure,
bit of a nightmare going through all of them.
But yeah, that's all I've got.
That's everything. Did you have anything last parting moment or parting remarks?
I mean, I just we all miss Anton, and keep spreading the word about all of his movies.
Absolutely.
Because he's one of those amazing talents that we've lost way too too early. So, and thank you guys for taking the time and the energy and talking about burying the X. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
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 Well, that wraps up the interview. Thanks again to Kyle for taking the time. The movie this week was Burying the X, which the podcast episode came out Wednesday. So anyone who hasn't listened to that yet, go check it out. Also watch the movie because it's a lighthearted zombie movie, which you don't often get. It's in the same style as Shaun of the Dead with the comedy and all of that. Mm-hmm. Our first paid sponsor as well. It's a week of first. It's kind of a crazy roller coaster ride of emotion this week.
Yeah.
So find us on Twitter at CinematicallyC.
You'll find me on Twitter at
yes.
CinematicallyC. You
I'm
on Twitter at BlameTylerCC, but you have like 40 followers, so obviously no one's finding you. Just saying.
Wow, that's a little bit hurtful.
But you can still keep on using BlameTyler hashtag. I'm totally down for it. You can also find us on Instagram at CinematicallyC, and you can email us at cinematicallycorrect@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at CinematicallyCorrect's listener group.
We say this every time. Don't ever go there. We're never there.
But you never know. Maybe one day. So, other than that, we will be back next week with Dead Poet Society on Wednesday and our regularly scheduled podcast.
Right. Thanks to Jake at This Music for our intro and outro music, and we will see you next week for the regularly programmed feature.